Time to smash it up on a Monday night alongside the managing editor of Warchant.com, Ira Schoffel. My name is Tom Lang, and you are with us for the penultimate Monday Smash before college football season begins. It's presented by State Farm agent and longtime diehard Nole fan Russ Forhis. We'll tell you about Russ in a little bit. Ira, welcome to the program, man. Do you feel like we've turned a corner? Because I do. I feel like it.
It's man, it's official. It's like I went back and I went and watched some other college football coaches' press conferences from this weekend after their second scrimmages, and it was good to hear them all say the same thing, which is the way I feel. It's like camp's over now. You know, I know technically there's another week of camp before game week, but the reality is, even for teams that don't play in week 0, they don't play until the first weekend of September, like Florida State. Camp's pretty much over now. They're all going to get into game prep, and it's going to be, you know, just it's a different deal, man. Those football practices, I don't know how you feel, Tom, but like there are certain days of football practice where I'll watch these guys and think, from other than the fact that I wasn't strong enough, fast enough, athletic enough, or tough enough. Yeah. The other reason I could not have been a college football player was it can really be boring. Like the days where they're just working on these basic mundane drills, I don't know, man. I don't know how they do it. It's like, how do they push themselves to be focused on those drills in the middle of August? But now it's the real deal. Like they'll be preparing for LSU starting on Wednesday. So it's a different feel, I think.
Yeah, we talk about this often, just how regimented, professional that this group is. And in general, Mike Norvell's teams, they practice well. Meaning, like, there isn't a whole lot of pouting or guys like standing off to the side, having to be told where to go, when to go. And a lot of times people will talk about college football players and say, man, they're just so immature. Like, I don't know, man. In order to be able to hit a tackling dummy 5 times in a row and get yelled at by Randy Shannon when you're in shorts and no shoulder pads, and it's day 5 out of 6 in a row, you got to have some maturity to you to be able to do that, Ira.
Even the quarterbacks, man, like Jordan Travis is one of the best college football players in the country, right? He could be in an NFL camp right now if he decided to go early. Jared Verse, certainly. But like, I watch them some days, and Tony Tokars will have them doing the most basic drill, and sometimes we'll take videos of it, you know, just stepping around this cone and, you know, hitting this target and it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, that's why I would never have been good in sports, like at a high level, because you have to work on those minute details at this point in your career. And in football, it's even more so. You know, it's like baseball. I don't know, man. They're taking batting practice. They're fielding ground balls. That seems more fun than some of the things they have to do at a football practice.
And they are taking these details quite seriously at practice. And I can hear it in your voice, Ira. It's all right. We had to go out there 5 days in a row. And after a while, watching kickoff drills gets old, man. It gets old. You hear Papuchas out in the distance yelling, bah, 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 it's full speed. And you're like, man, this is okay. 3 more periods of this, then we get back to 11 on 11. But they're there. They're working very hard. And Ira, after the second scrimmage, which we had the interviews yesterday morning, they were done earlier than originally scheduled, but not for a bad reason. It seems like, and you wrote about it on Warchant.com, coaching staff was very happy across all 3 phases with what they saw yesterday, which, again, no major injuries and everybody's happy. That doesn't happen very often.
What did you make of it, man? We really didn't talk about it. You and I texted a little bit during the press conference, but we didn't really talk about it. And I haven't got a chance to watch all of the JCS today to hear what you guys' thoughts were, but I can't remember the last time I've ever seen that happen where, you know, Norvell seemed, I think, pretty pleased. Atkins seemed pretty pleased. Fuller seemed pretty pleased. JP said it was their best kicking day of camp. You don't ever see that, I don't think. I mean, I don't know when. Can you recall anything like that?
No, you know, it reminds me of a game in major leagues. You know, your Orioles are very good this year, but you know, your starter throws maybe a complete game 4-hit shutout, and then you score 12 runs, and then the next day you lose 2-1. You're like, don't waste all of it. Don't waste all of it here. That's probably the worrisome part of that equation, where it seems like it goes right across the board. But I think they know, Ira, that they've got so many good players on either side of the ball when the offense goes on the defense, that when plays are being made, it's because they're earned and not because there's a deficiency. That you're going to win at the running game by default. You're going to win pass rushing Jordan Travis because you don't have a good offensive line by default. The defensive backs are going to beat the receivers like they did 2 years ago by default because you don't have any receivers who can win a one-on-one. I think they just know that they've got a lot of back and forth, and it's for the right reasons, not because they're deficient anywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's one of the cool things I think they saw in the scrimmage on Sunday, and that we're going to see over this next week and a half in practice, is I think there's going to be more good on good, and during camp, and Mike Norvell's talked about it. They've got some veteran players. When you've got guys like Jared Verse and Trey Benson and Kalen DeLoach and Tatum Bethune and guys that played Robert Scott, guys that played 3, 4, 5 years of college football. You don't necessarily need them out there every rep of every day of the one. So it's been cool. They've actually had this luxury and they've taken advantage of it by inserting in some of these younger guys. So you'll be out there and all of a sudden there's a freshman with the ones, or a couple of guys that were redshirt freshmen, or maybe a sophomore who hasn't played much, getting these reps with the ones, which is great for them. And it's cool when they look like they belong with the top offense or the top defense, but you're probably not getting quite the same look of what this team's really going to look like. And I think maybe that was part of it too. And that's kind of why I asked Norvell what I asked him, was you wonder if they realized, when they saw the full complement of parts, and there's still a couple guys I think that aren't totally 100%, but for the most part, they were playing their best players. And, I wonder if that was kind of a reminder to them of, man, this team's got a lot of weapons.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, and the coaching staff has gone on record talking about managing players and having guys that have played a ton of football. And so they've got a plan of, it's almost like a time release is what Mike Norvell is suggesting about having them get ready. But early in camp, there was a lot more, I thought, of true good on good as they were getting accustomed to football speed. And there would be periods where maybe the defense does, A, B, and C, but then Jordan Travis answers with D, none of the above. And, he makes a play and you're like, wow, that is something else. Or the offense has something schemed, and then maybe there's a pass rusher or a pressure that you didn't expect with a player who's really gifted at getting into the backfield. And you think, oh man, if they don't have that perfect rush, then a play, is going to be made right over the top. But that's what a good defense does.
Right.
I think they probably saw more of that back and forth. And for everybody this week, there's no practice for us to view until Wednesday. So this is very atypical. Last week, 5 days in a row, and then they had the scrimmage close to us on Sunday. We get Wednesday, Thursday, and then a Saturday night practice this week, which is much more the routine during the season. We get 2 days of practice access and then the game itself. So that's what we're phasing back into at this point, Ira. And again, if you're looking to check boxes, it's that the coaching staff is pleased. You've created more depth. Guys have taken leaps forward, and then you suffered no major injuries. That last part can change between now and LSU, but for right now, the coaching staff is going on record confident about where they are health-wise. And Ira, that's so huge, especially with a veteran group like this.
Yeah, and I'm sure, man, they're just like everybody else. You don't like to even acknowledge it because you don't know what's lurking around the corner. And I've seen teams where, the 2013 team was very fortunate. We've talked about it before, that they did not have injuries really the whole year, especially the positions where they couldn't afford to have injuries. And I thought it was cool. Norvell said it on Sunday, and I've seen him say this in maybe private settings, but he said it on Sunday when we talked to him on the record. That really, other than a couple of positions, maybe one position, unless they have injuries, they've got really good depth across the board. And you don't usually hear coaches say that. A lot of times, coaches will pour mouth, or they just don't want to acknowledge, hey, because here's the deal. As a coaching staff, if you acknowledge you've got talent, experience, and depth, if you don't have success, where's everybody looking? So a lot of times coaches aren't going to be forthright about that fact. Man, this is a team that is pretty well loaded. And, and again, if you got some injuries at one position here or there, it could change things. But for where they are right now, man, they're in great shape, and, knock on wood that it continues that way. But, one other thing that I want to mention that, he said, I guess it was him, and then Fuller talked about as well, just how high they are on those young DBs.
Yeah.
That to me has been one of the stories of camp, because, I don't know how many of those guys are going to help in the base defense. Conrad Hussey, Edwin Joseph, the guys who were Quindarius and KJ Kirkland and all those guys, and Ashland Barker. I think Ashland Barker will play some, but I don't know how many of those guys will actually play in the defense. But I think they're going to force their way onto the field on special teams. And you got to take note of that, because they'll play starters on special teams, on the coverage units,
Yeah.
So if those freshmen get in there, that tells you a lot about what those guys are made out of.
More and more of you are filing in right now on Monday Smash, upwards of 300. Make sure to hit the like button as you enter. This is Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Forhis. Big fan of Warchant.com, one of Warchant's first supporters, and we'll tell you more about Russ as the program goes along. But if you have insurance needs in either the state of Florida or the state of Georgia, or how about also the state of Alabama, you're going to get a hometown level of service from Russ. He'll answer all your questions. So you can talk to him on the phone, via web, or if you're local, go to Jacksonville Beach or Orange Park. It's russforhis.com is the website. He's fantastic.
We're not going to tell you quite as much about Russ as we did last week on the Smash/headlines. Russ called me afterwards. He's like, "Hey man, are you guys going to bill me extra for all that?"
Well, like, no. I'm glad he appreciated the exposure for the 92 breaks y'all took, and the fact that you flew past the necessary amount of time for the Tuesday running of the show. But Dave in Bardstown, we appreciate your contribution. It was waiting for us more than 10 minutes before the show started, actually 6:30. I see you. Thanks for the support. LSU secondary is nervous. I won't address the rest of your question, but we very much appreciate that. And we will address questions in general here on Monday Smash. I see Jeremy's in the house. Thank you, Jeremy. Welcome.
And David, just to let you know, thanks for the contribution. I would have run your question. Tom, Tom's a stickler. Okay. He's a hardliner. I thought it was perfectly fine, but no, I'm just kidding.
I see how it is. No red light rolling and then red light rolling. All right, I got you.
We appreciate it. We appreciate it. It was for our benefit. We just can't share it with everybody else.
Ira is throwing down with a red stripe tonight. He is in mid-season form. Right. I had a client meeting this evening for a happy hour, so therefore I'm having just water because the happy hour was delightful. But it is in a fantastic Gordo's Cup, a signature cup here in Tallahassee. And Ira, I'm not over watching practice because we're very, very lucky compared to the rest of our media brethren around the country to see as much practice as we do. I do not take that for granted. I never will. I do want to see how they install for LSU, and we can't quite describe what we see over the next week and a half. But compared to different practices and different camps in the Mike Norvell era, personally, this is just such high-quality stuff, even when the second wave of players comes out, the third wave of players, like you're talking about with the young defensive backs. I'd be curious to get your take on it because you've seen practices over different eras of Florida State football, some really good ones. But when you take in a 2.5 hour practice and you're walking off the field, how does this one strike you compared to some of the others you've seen in your career?
It's been impressive to me. I think the most impressive thing, though, hasn't even been the quality of play. And there's been really good quality of play. There are moments in practices where, man, you see a quarterback, deliver a perfect pass, whether it's Jordan Travis or Brock Glenn or Tate Rodemaker or even AJ. And there are moments you see those moments. You also see the moments where you see dynamic breaks on the ball by linebackers or DBs. There was a play that caught my eye last week with DJ Lundy, just reading he read a play in the backfield. It was kind of a misdirection thing. Man, he read it and triggered and got into the backfield in an instant. And to see DJ Lundy, who's a guy that, what you think back to what he looked like 3 years ago, to see him making that play and look that athletic now, it kind of catches your eye. And I thought it was good to hear, I think it was Fuller or Norvell talk about that on Sunday, about how improved he is. So the quality of play is good, without question. And you see flash moments and overall good competence. I think that's what I would say, like when you talk about the from first snap to the last snap, you don't see confusion. You don't see a lot of miscommunications. They know what they're doing. They know how they're supposed to do it, and you see a high level of play. But the most impressive thing to me, and I think I asked Norvell about it, is I just haven't seen one of those days of practice where it was just flat. Like the whole day just was like a complete waste. There may be a day where it's not as sharp as it is other days, but you think back to when we didn't get to watch practice, and you have the days where a coach would come off the practice field and light into the team because this was ridiculous. This is not going to get it done. They just went through the motions. That's going to kill us. Norvell isn't that kind of coach in general, but I don't think he's ever needed to. Like with an experienced team, it's cool that they seem to practice at a high level and focus throughout an entire camp. I think usually you have 1 or 2 days where that's not the case.
Yeah, and he said, I believe it was in the Sunday presser, that they did have a couple of periods at one point
Right.
on one day where he was, and we saw it. You could see he was fuming. It was more about Mike than it was anything that was apparent about what the players were doing. Like you could see that maybe everything wasn't running as efficiently as it should, just with a naked eye. But then you go look over to coach, you're like, oh man, he's steaming. Okay, he's steaming. But I think what you're talking about correctly here is that the level, the curve that you're grading on is so much higher. It doesn't look like a tire fire out there. It doesn't look like kids are just shutting down on the coaching staff. There's a consistent level of professionalism to what they do. I keep coming back to that word, and it's not because of the NIL era we live in. It's just they go from station to station and they get their jobs done. And it all starts with that veteran core at the top. This isn't as rah-rah a group as LaMarcus Joyner and Telvin Smith and James Wilder Jr., Timmy Jernigan, that crew for 2013. Jameis got the credit for the clip before the Clemson game, but if you look at where he's standing versus where those other four guys were, Jameis is in the seats, and at the head of the class were those guys, the older players. I don't think the core's like that, Ira, where they're going to track you down, kick the door down if you don't show up and do what you're supposed to do. But they're just so stable at the top, I feel like. The offense likes the defense, the leaders like the leaders, and there's just a sense of stability and continuity that I don't know that I've ever seen. And probably the NIL / COVID eligibility era that we live in affords the opportunity for a team to kind of look as veteran as this one does.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly it's the exact opposite of what everybody thought would happen if you built a team through the portal. You know, the big concern everybody had. Now, look, everybody's trying to play in the portal now, except Dabo. Dabo's he's going to do his own thing. But pretty much every other coach is going into the portal and trying to find guys. But the big concern everybody had 2 or 3 years ago was, man, you're just going to get these mercenaries. There's a reason they went in the portal. They're probably not good teammates. They're just coming for a paycheck, or they're just coming for 1 year to get an opportunity to shine, and then they're going to move on. But because they've got so many of those guys that have been here now 3 or 4 years, they do such a good job of when they bring in these new guys that they're assimilated. I was talking to somebody the other day that I think this just hit on me when I was talking about it. 3 or 4 years ago, I don't think it was on a show. I think it was just, hopefully I'm not repeating this, but I think it was just talking to somebody off the air. Like 3 or 4 years ago when Keyshawn Helton showed up, or Stephen Dick showed up, or some of the, just Darius Washington, different guys would show up and just do things the right way and work hard and have a good attitude. They stood out because they were different than everybody else. Like it just wasn't that the culture wasn't there. Now you'd only stand out if you're doing the wrong thing. And it doesn't get tolerated anymore. And that's so different, man. I remember watching, again, Keyshawn Helton. I wish he was still at Florida State. I think he's going to be better off probably at Cincinnati, but he was the kind of guy that he would get onto older guys, bigger guys, defensive linemen, yell at them for their attitudes in practice. Like he wanted to be that leader, even though he's this 5'0" wide receiver. But now you wouldn't need him really, because everybody's kind of riding that same message. And so it's cool now where they bring in guys and they get assimilated quickly, and they just become part of that team. And again, we'll see what happens when the games start. And if you get punched in the mouth by LSU or Clemson and you're down 2 scores, maybe it's not the same. But that's been really one of the things all preseason I've been impressed by, is just how hard they work and how focused they are.
Well, and that's the thing. It's hard. And I see there are some questions in the chat about this, about, is this fan base, is this team, is there a cockiness level there that perhaps they don't deserve, given that, last year they finished the season against 2 barely bowl eligible teams, struggled with both of them, came out with wins, and then they face 3 ranked teams in a row and they lose all 3. Like, is there a middle ground that we should be operating in instead of, chest puffed out? But Ira, I've got to tell you, just judging by the coach's body language and what they're willing to say on the record, they feel really, really good about the situation they're in. I don't think Mike Norvell would trade the situation he's in right now for the one that Brian Kelly has, and that's his first opponent. I think he feels really, really strong about what this Florida State team can be, and it doesn't need to measure up to anything else. Like, by itself, this could potentially be a team that delivers on the championships that Mike Norvell's talking about. And he was referencing conference championships as early as last bowl season. Like that's the standard moving forward. I think they feel really good about what they've got. And it doesn't matter what the fans or we say. They exude that confidence when they speak to us.
How much of it do you think stems back to last season? Because, you think about the kind of ebbs and flows of last season. So they come out of the gate, they beat LSU. Jared Verse says they're back. The players are on top of the world, and then they reel off a few more wins, and they're feeling really good about themselves. That Wake Forest game, man, I just thought Wake Forest outplayed them. They were more physical, which surprised me. They were more confident. That was an old Wake Forest team. It was still a pretty young Florida State team overall. Plus, I don't think the offense and Jordan were to the level they're at now. And then you go through that 3-game stretch there where they're just scuffling, trying to find their way out of it. NC State game beat themselves. Clemson, I could argue they kind of beat themselves to some degree. I know that people thought that game was a blowout. I thought Florida State was right in it till that little sequence before the half and after the half.
Yes.
But at that point, man, we're thinking this season could be a dud. They've lost 3 straight games. They're looking at their harder stretch of the season. We all thought the last 5 games would be the hardest stretch. And then they reel off 6 straight wins and don't look anything really like they did earlier. Now, you could say the Oklahoma game was closer than expected and the Florida game was closer than expected, and that's fair. But I also think so much of that was personnel limitations, injuries, and you're playing 2 teams who are trying to save their seasons by knocking you off. So I don't put as much on those 2 games. I put a lot more on that. The fact that you turned it around and the way you looked over those next 4 or 5 weeks. And it wasn't just because you played inferior opponents, because if you had gone in the tank, it wouldn't matter who you played. So I think that's when it turned around. And then you add in these new pieces, man. I'm really fired up for what they're going to look like.
You are, and we're going to talk about that as it pertains to LSU in just a moment. Director Ben, if you would, how about a word from our friend Russ Forhis?
Contact Russ Forhis for an auto quote today.
Is a spot length made for the era we live in. Yeah, go ahead.
Could we get her to do some Warchant voiceovers?
Sure.
She's got a very pleasant voice.
Yeah, right? Russ, I don't know if that's a State Farm employee or if that's an agency, but I'll call you, Russ. I believe I'll use the Orange Park number, 904-276-9535, and we can discuss getting some voiceover work done. I'd love that. Ira, that's a good post-game show voice, too.
Yes.
Live for the post-game show on Warchant TV.
And actually, I've been a customer of Russ's before in the past, and give him a call, like Tom said. Everybody, you're locked in your insurance for 6 months or a year, whatever it is. But next time it comes up, just give him a shot. I mean, he's a Nole, great guy, and give him a chance to earn your business.
I feel like, Ira, you've been, if not the most bullish, certainly one of the most bullish on FSU's chances against LSU, and you have been for a little while. When did you first start feeling that way? I mean, was it before this camp even began? And talk to me about that a little bit, because I think you've been on that train longer than most.
Yeah, man, I really, probably since camp started, I was impressed by LSU, the way they turned it around. And I think Brian Kelly's a really good coach. And that job to me is an unbelievable job. There's a reason Jimbo Fisher wanted that job. He tried to get it 2 years in a row. I don't care what he says. I don't care what anybody tells you. 2 years in a row, he wanted that job, and it didn't work out, and he stayed at Florida State. But that job is, man, different. I mean, they have all the resources, and you have that. You're the only school in that state when it comes to like a Power 5 school, so where you can dominate, and you're in the SEC, so those kids don't really feel the need to want to leave. There are kids in the state of Florida who want to go play in the SEC, and so Florida State's going to have a tough time getting those guys until Sankey makes the call. But in right now, I mean, so LSU's got all these advantages. They have an incredible support. When James Coley was here, Jimbo's tight ends coach and quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator. I think he was offensive coordinator here at one point. But anyway, James Coley used to tell me, because he was at LSU with Jimbo. He was a GA, and he would talk about the resources they had there. And it's deep. I mean, they are rolling deep at LSU. And so I think Brian Kelly's going to have a tremendous success there. I think he's a very good coach. If he keeps that talent there, I mean, it's gonna take off. So that from that standpoint, I respect them and I give them credit, and I think it's going to be a good game. But man, I just think this Florida State team is perfectly situated to come out of the gates really strong. I think you've got. I just don't think. I mean, I've heard people talk about both teams have good quarterbacks. Man, I feel like Jordan Travis is a big win there in that comparison. I think you look at the experience you have, the playmakers you have, the depth you have. I just think it adds up to Florida State being a better team. And I thought they were a much better team last year. And I think I'm sure LSU's improved, but I think Florida State's improved as well. I feel like if Florida State plays well, I think, in my opinion, maybe I'll be wrong. In my opinion, Florida State's going to have to play poorly or play below what they could play for LSU to win that game. I think LSU is going to have to play above their head to beat up Florida State.
Yeah, agreed. You're talking to a guy here who got blasted on the Warchant TV channel because LSU fans made their way in and made a video last year that Jordan Travis is the better quarterback in the matchup. Yeah. Before the game started. That's all the more true now. It just is. He keeps adding facets to his game, Ira. Jordan does. I don't know that Daniels has as many, just period. That Jordan can beat you in 4 or 5 different ways. I've seen personally, I think you would agree with this, but it looks like Jordan's gotten even better at going 1 through 4 in his progressions after he gets the snap, reading it out, and then if nothing's there, he could still run if he wants to, but he's found number 3 or number 4 on a given play multiple times this preseason. You're like, oh, what do you do with that? Because that guy can just beat you in a foot race. He can beat you to the corner. He can throw the deep ball, or now he can read it out. And he was already really, really good at run checks pre-snap too.
Right. And that's the thing. Like people, even when Kenny Dillingham was here, he would talk about how good Jordan was about the run checks and things pre-snap reads. And people kind of mock it a little bit, but no, I think he's always been very good at that. Once the game started, though, sometimes I don't think he always – 2 years ago felt as comfortable with what's going on. But now, man, you see it. And if I had one little concern, and man, it's a good problem to have. It's a small concern. It's, and you and I have talked about a little bit of practice. He's so confident now and he's playing so well that you could see him maybe take some chances that he wouldn't have taken a year ago. You look at throughout his career, Jordan's been a kind of a risk averse quarterback. He doesn't throw a lot of picks. He doesn't put the ball on the ground a lot. He'll make some plays, but he's not going to take risks. He's no Brett Favre out there. But now he's so comfortable and confident. I could see a scenario where maybe he tries to do a little bit more of that in games. So that's something I want to watch to make sure he keeps that in check because he's playing with a world of confidence.
Yeah, agreed. I think the ball's been in danger a little bit more this camp. And
He'll take more chances, yeah.
And I think it could be a combination of things too. It could just be the defense is better. But I think he's also testing the limits. You got to learn what Keon Coleman is as much as you possibly can because there is no Duquesne. There's no warm-up here. You got to learn what Jaheim Bell is, what you could trust these guys to do and not do. So perhaps there's a judiciousness that returns for game 1, but maybe there is a little bit more feast or famine. I think that's what this defense is going to be about, Ira. I think they might give up some big plays in the back end, but they're going to make some too. And if the defense does that, that's a huge win because you're going to get short fields or sudden changes, possessions near midfield. Last year they generated 8 interceptions total on defense, and they got to do better than that. And if camp is any indication of what's about to happen this season, Ira, they're going well into the double digits this year in terms of interceptions generated. And think about what this offense could be or what this whole team could do if Florida State generates more than 16 turnovers from the defense this year. I mean, this is how you can beat really good teams by wide margins if you can win that turnover battle by 2 or 3.
Yeah, and we'll see, and again, it can come in a variety of different formats. Like you said, it can come from picks. Yep. It also could come from hits on the quarterback. It could come from just physical play. And that was one of the things Adam Fuller talked about in the scrimmage, that he felt like they've improved in that level because, probably the week before the first scrimmage, they weren't very happy with that. Not only did they not pick off any passes, but they didn't jar any balls loose. And that even if you are thudding, even if you're not tackling everybody to the ground, you can deliver a hit. And, it sounds like they're doing a better job of that.
Z-Chan, the official DMD of Warchant TV, chimes in, as he often does, one of the pillars here. He says, late to the party, can you guys envision any scenario where FSU doesn't end up in the SEC or the B1G? Where the party at on Saturday night in Orlando? Z-Chan, we will answer question 2 in a little bit, but we'll get to the conference realignment thing. Remember that thing we talked about a bunch and we haven't done so a lot lately? Ira, quickly for me, no. I don't think there's a scenario in which they don't end up at one of those Power 2, but could you devise a way that a doomsday scenario happens for Florida State?
I don't think so, man, unless the whole thing flipped upside down and there really wasn't a big, Power 2, and maybe there's just like one big group of 40 or 48, whatever it is, college football teams, then it would be different. But no, as long as it's like this, I mean, I think that's where Florida State's going to end up. And I think all of the powerful, good teams are gonna end up in there. The teams that want to be successful in football, because one of the things that, we've talked about it off and on a little bit throughout the course of the last year or two, is that there are going to be some of these teams in the SEC and the Big Ten who might not be all in with where college football is going. Yeah. There's probably going to, Peter Schoenthal, who we have on the show on videos from time to time, he's very confident, and I believe him, that it's going to be going to revenue sharing pretty soon, at least in football and men's basketball, maybe one or two other sports. But you're going to have revenue sharing where the athletes are getting real money from these TV contracts. That may not be what some of these schools want to be involved with. And so, I don't know if you saw there's a report with Stanford where their concern with Stanford is if they don't get into the ACC, there's concern that they would get out of FBS football. And it's like, what does that tell you? What's their commitment to being in this new world of college football? Well, Wake Forest seems all in, but is Vanderbilt going to be all in? There's going to be some schools in those two conferences that may not, which may lead to some more shifting over time. So, but if there are those two conferences, yeah, long way of saying I'm sure Florida State's going to be in one of them.
It also tells me that the Pac-12 revenue that was generated had no impact on Stanford's ability to compete in every other sport besides football, because the old Directors Cup, the Capital One Cup, whatever you want to call it, Stanford is affixed at that top level or one or two. Yep. And that's about the endowment, folks. That's about how rich the university is, not because the Pac-12 is generating extra revenue from Fox.
Right. Plus they have a million sports, and some of those sports don't have a lot of teams playing them. I mean, there's not a ton of water polo teams out there, but Stanford will rack up some championships in water polo.
Oh, goodness. And wouldn't Jim Phillips be so happy to rave about that championship for the ACC and fly that banner? The Godfather, Ed Lemmix, called the bet, as it were. That's what he says for Z-Chan. I call your bet. Go Noles. I saw that he asked a question earlier, did the Godfather, about the lineup for what we've got in Orlando. So let me promote that for a moment, if you would. Director Ben, this is what we got going on when we are down in Orlando. Saturday, we've got a meet and greet. This is all taking place downtown the Wall Street Plaza. Ira knows all about that. We're about to paint the Wall Street Plaza garnet and gold at Hooch. What a great name for an establishment. They do have some moonshine beverages, Ira, so I know we'll be throwing back a few.
Sweet. Meet
and greet on Saturday, 4 o'clock, a live edition of Seminole Headlines at 5. There may be an event that happens a little bit later after that. Message boards on warchant.com. We know about it. More information to come later this week. The primary plan would be what's on the boards for our subscribers. If not, we could just be hanging out at Hooch for a lot longer and watch more college football with y'all. So that's Saturday. Sunday, we've got a pregame show on the Wall Street Plaza. Again, this will be a stage just outside of Hooch. So if you can find Hooch in downtown Orlando, you're going to find where we're at all weekend long. That is a noon to 2 show, followed by a postgame show from, you guessed it, at Hooch. And it'll be going until 1 in the morning. So that'll be a fun time. And Ira, I said I'm going to change that time to 1-0 in the morning. That's what I'm feeling right now.
Nice.
A little 1-0. So that's where we are in Orlando. Festivities on Saturday and Sunday. And just for your planning purposes, they've got a huge shebang going on at the Wall Street Plaza on Friday night, Saturday night. It is a ticketed event. It's $20. That's not necessarily something that Warchant is doing, but they've got live vendors and food trucks and beverage stations, and it's like 6 or 8 bars. It's going to be a block party that you can just walk up and down. So for planning purposes on Saturday, bring a 20 with you or bring a credit card if you want to hang. But that's just the policy of the Wall Street Plaza. Burke Buchanan, friend of the program. What's up, Burke? A little 2023 shout out. We appreciate you. And if he's got a question, Director Ben, go ahead and pull that up in a bit.
Thanks,
James
Burke.
B. Go ahead.
I just said thanks, Burke.
James B., good evening. Love the videos with Peter. Ira, can you all expound on how much better Dennis Briggs has looked this preseason? Go ahead, Ira. What do you think about Dennis Briggs?
Yeah, Jeff and I were talking about Dennis today on the Jeff Cameron Show, wildly popular, 1 to 3 p.m. on 93.3 in Tallahassee and Warchant TV. Yeah, the thing about Dennis Briggs is it's not – I don't know that it's like he looks like something completely different than what we've seen in the past, but I think we're seeing the best version of Dennis Briggs. He came in and, before his knee injury, Jeff brought up today, like when he got cheap shotted a couple years ago, he was playing really well. And then it took him probably well over a year to get back to what he was. Late last season, though, I thought you started seeing signs of it. He was in on the last sack, I think, with Jared Verse in the Oklahoma game. I mean, you saw some explosiveness back, and he's had this whole offseason to really focus on being a defensive tackle. And I just think, man, it's for Dennis Briggs to be a 6-year senior, to be 6'4", 290, I believe he is about, to have him coming off the bench, that's pretty special, man. Like he'd be starting at a lot of schools. I'm not saying he'd be an all SEC defensive tackle at a lot of schools. I'm saying he could start on a lot of teams that Florida State will be playing this season. Dennis Briggs would be comparable or better than what they're starting at defensive tackle, and you're probably going to be rolling him off the bench. I think it just speaks to what you have and the fact that he's a guy that nobody really talks about, but he's going to be a real contributor.
Yeah, there's a mantra that I personally have for this defense, Ira. It's get to third and passing. Find a way to get to third and passing because they've got weapons to do a lot of different things. It could be to get off the field with a strip sack, as you talked about with these pass rushers, getting downhill as a secondary, creating turnovers. And Dennis Briggs is another weapon you can deploy. That's a tough matchup for a guard in a third and obvious. He's just so damn quick. So he's another guy like a Braden Fisk where you line him up in the middle. Fabian Lovett's the same way. It's just you're so quick for a guard when it's 3rd and 12. Man, quarterbacks have to be so alert when they face Florida State. If they can get them 3rd and long, 3rd and obvious, or Ira, they have a big lead late in the game, and that it's got to be about passing. That'll be fun to see what Florida State's defense can do. Burke has a question. Let's post that back up. In the past, defense dominating our Bowden Dynasty offenses in preseason was a staple. Do you feel the Florida State defense being able to at least slow down the offense, is a sign of good things? Personally, Burke, I think they're pushing the offense. I think they have some days without all of their 11 starters because they're managing dudes. And I think that's a really good sign. But Ira, what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I don't – part of the issue, though, just kind of we're out there and everybody can't be out there. So just to try to give you some context, we don't always know exactly what they're working on in practice. Sometimes when they're doing a drill, like it's 1st and 10 or 1st and 8, and they're not moving the ball. It's not a drive. Yeah. It's just a situation. And sometimes it's just a bad play call against what the defense was running. And so it looks like the defense dominated, but maybe, there's a lot going on that more than just we're trying to score and you're trying to stop us. But yeah, man, the defense has more than held their own. I don't think that's, and if you watch like the inside drill, one of the drills that we watch a lot, Tom and I watch a lot is, when you basically got it, it's like the opposite of 7-on-7. It's, it's the offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, running backs, and usually a scout team quarterback, and they're working on the running game and run defense. There are days where the defense whips them up front, and that's a good offensive line. And in one-on-ones, you see them go back and forth. So that to me is been cool to see. And then in the one-on-ones at receiver and defensive back, the DBs have, I don't know, man. What would you say, Tom, if you charted every one-on-one receiver DB drill, tight end safety drill, tight end linebacker safety drill since camp started, like who do you think's got the edge?
I think the offense does, but I don't think I've seen.
But that's the nature of that drill, though. I mean,
correct. Yeah, I don't know if it's more than the curve. Like, for example, I've heard reports out of LSU, some media members saying that the receivers might beat the defensive backs 90% of the time. Like, it's not like that. It's certainly not that. And the other day in one of those run game drills you were talking about, I think I charted 12 plays, and maybe it was 7 to 5 for the defensive line, which is a huge win for the offense because you could just cheat against a run there. You're not being kept.
Yeah, there's no threat of a pass. Yeah,
right. It's a run game drill. It's the nature of the drill. Like sometimes the quarterback will tuck it or keep it, and then guys get looking foolish. But generally speaking, that's not what they're trying to work on. So I've been very impressed with the quality of the competition. There have been so many camps before this one where a certain position group, like I'll go back to defensive backs 2 years ago against the receivers. I don't know how much I'm learning in 7-on-7, Ira. The receivers aren't very good. Like, I don't know how much I'm learning. I feel like I'm learning so much each day.
You remember our guy Jarvis Brownlee?
Yeah.
Dude, he would go, it seemed like he would go practices without giving up a completion.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Against the receivers. And then you get into games, you're like, wait a minute. Maybe he's not that great. I mean, he was fine. He's a solid player, but he looked unbelievable in practice against the receivers they were trotting out there. Well, now you're trotting, Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and, Ventrivius Jacobs and Winston. I mean, there's just so many guys. So when the DBs do win battles, you have to appreciate it. And they're winning battles. The defense is not going to shut down this offense, but I think they've held their own.
And they'll be more than prepared for every offense they see on this 12-game schedule because of what they go against. That's the nature of being a good football team and playing each other every day. Patrick Vickers, thank you very much for the contribution. He asks a question. Do you think Jackson's waiver, that's Darryl Jackson, will come through before the LSU or Clemson game? Now, this is something else that you discussed with Jeff today on the show, Ira's around 2:30 on Mondays. You can catch Ira on the Jeff Cameron show. This has gone from no way, no how to what, do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say, I would say a week or two ago, it was flatlined, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, man. I think old Marco Rubio and Jimmy Petronas and Neil Dunn and these different politicians may have gotten the paddles out. And we might be, getting some lines here where, we're not flatlined anymore. I mean, I think that there's at least a possibility, and again, the video that we did with Peter on Friday, he talked about it, and it makes perfect sense. Right now, for people that didn't see it, Congress, the NCAA wants help from Congress when it comes to NIL and just some rules, some guidelines in place for how to pay players and whether or not they're employees or not employees, and can they create a special designation where they still stay amateur, but they do get paid or part of the revenue. There's a lot of things that college football wants help from Congress on. So right now you've got this situation where at Florida State, at North Carolina, I believe Arizona State, there's several players in this situation that kind of got done wrong, it feels like, by that policy change from the NCAA. And now you've got these political figures and you get some people in Congress saying, hey, we want you to revisit this and look at this. In the past, you would have thought the NCAA would just, be like, whatever, we don't care. We're going to do our own thing. You guys figure out Congress. They may have to listen a little bit more now. So I think that door is open. And if it's cracked open at all, I think it is cracked open at all. If it is cracked open at all, man, I think there's a shot. Because again, it's telling some nameless kid that you're never going to have to see again that you turn down his waiver is one thing. Telling these politicians who've not only sent you these letters, but they put out press releases about these letters, they attach their names to these stories, telling them you don't want to hear it could be a little bit different.
Yeah, they need yes votes. They need more discussion. They need action from Congress, and they will drag their heels. These are free yes votes for NCAA legislation. I would think maybe that was some of the math, Ira. Maybe the NCAA is that smart that they knew if they did this, then they could create a chip to trade with, in order for legislation to be moving faster and actually existing to help them with their current crisis that they're dealing with. I hope it doesn't work out for the NCAA, though, Ira, because this feels like their way to weasel back into control of college football to a degree if they can get some legislation here for beyond, I think NIL might be the pathway for them to assert themselves back into college football, which they've been very much separate from for a long time.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And somebody in the chat said, when Irish is possible, I feel like that's probably less than 20%, 25%. Yeah, that's probably true. I'm not telling you that because the door is open that I'm just saying I thought it was going to be flatline. Mm-hmm. And I do feel like the door is open now to some degree. Yeah, Tom, I don't know, man. I still think there's talk about, football breaking off from the NCAA. And I think that's where it's going to go. I just don't think it doesn't make sense if you're going to be paying players, they're going to be getting part of the revenue, whatever it is. And college football is so different from all these other sports. keeping them all under the same umbrella just doesn't seem to make sense. I mean, I think there's going to be Title IX implications if you're paying only the football players and not the other sports. If there's a way, again, maybe with Congress's help or whatever, maybe if you create this new entity where it's just football, or maybe football men's basketball, or football men's and women's basketball, whatever it is, and have their own governing body, then the NCAA can just oversee everything else. Yep. They can run the championships and all these other sports. And I think that's where it needs to get to. I'm not smart enough to tell you how it's going to get there.
Oh, well, nobody knows. They're going to make it up as they go, I think, and then they're just going to sign it. You're like, all right, and so it is. More questions now in the final 10 to 15 minutes here of the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. And these are questions that you have littered in through the chat here on Warchant TV. If you're listening on the podcast by chance, join us Monday nights, 7 o'clock. There's going to be a day of the week change as we get into the season, but not quite yet. So find us on Warchant TV by searching Warchant on YouTube, subscribing to the channel. It's absolutely free, and hitting the bell. You'll get an alert on your phone when we go live. And then you can ask your questions if you're watching on demand or on replay. So Director Ben, what do we have next in the hopper in terms of questions? From Benjamin, is this the best FSU team that you've seen in the last 10 years? Well, that means we're going to have to rule out 2013. I know that if you count it right.
Yeah. Even 14 is more talented.
Yeah. I think 2015's defense is one of the more talented. Like, if you did segment groups, they're probably the fourth most talented segment group in the last 10 years. You got 2013 offense, defense, 2014 offense, I still think was unbelievable. And then probably 2015 defense was nasty.
Yeah, and the 2014 defense was loaded with talent. A bunch of those guys played in the league for a long time. They just didn't play like it. Yeah, I think that's something that we talked a lot about here and there, and I don't know how to articulate it. Maybe we can work through this here, Tom. But like, I'm high on this team, and I think this team's got a chance to maybe make the playoff and win the ACC. I think this team's better than probably every team that they play on the schedule. I really believe that. But part of it is because you've got these old dudes.
Yeah, right.
And so the top line talent, I'm not trying to tell anybody that, Jarian Jones is a better cornerback than Ronald Darby. But at this point in his career, he's played 5 or 6 years of college football. Yep. Maybe he is more dependable than, you know what I'm saying? So like, that's why to me, it's hard to compare the 13 or 14 or even 15 teams with this team. Is those teams, man, were loaded with NFL superstar college, NFL talent. This team has a lot of NFL talent. I just don't know if it has quite as much as those teams.
Yeah, and it does.
But it probably makes up for it, or more than makes up for it, in experience and depth.
I think this is also a different era, even 10 years later, where because like, so Auburn's offense was novel. The tempo that they went, it tripped everybody up. And Gus was considered a visionary. Like, I know he wasn't the first to do it. Obviously, Chip Kelly had done a bunch of things at Oregon previously, and there are other teams that went at breakneck speed. But Auburn was different that year, and it felt like, man, this is the beginning of a new era of football. And to a degree, Ira, that's the case now where, in Florida State's 2013 national championship year, if you hit 28 to 31 points, you pretty much were going to win most every game. Now it's 35, 38, to feel comfortable about winning. So I think the value of a Ronald Darby or a LaMarcus Joyner, it goes down a little bit because by nature, you're going to score a ton of points in this era of college football. So to that end, this offense is really talented. This is a top 3 offense in the last 10 years. There's no question in my mind. And Ira, the thing I love about this group is they've got what it takes, I think, to run away and hide from even the best teams that they play on the schedule. This team has it in them. I don't know that they will, and it might not be the likely case that it happens, but they have it in them to blow LSU out. They have it in them to blow Clemson out because this offense can be a machine. And if you're up by 10 points and you get a stop and you got to give the ball back to Jordan Travis because the defense stopped you, I mean, that's how 2013's blowout up at Clemson happened. Ira, turnovers were a big factor in that first half to allow the Jameis Winston-led Noles to go out, run, and hide. And that was a laugher at halftime, but it was because of a scoop and score and another early turnover. There were 3 of them, in fact, in the first half, I think, by Clemson's offense.
Right.
This offense is freaking scary, man. Like, when it gets rolling and Mike Norvell saying play faster, they can play fast. That's where I think it's a different era of college football, and this team's kind of suited to take advantage of the era that we're in.
No, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, man, I remember back in the day, like it wasn't that long ago, but I mean, talk about 15 years ago. If you had a great corner, when Florida State had Antonio Cromartie when he was healthy, like the idea was he could shut down one side of the field. Like Jalen Ramsey could be a guy, he could shut down one side of the field. That's not happening anymore. Like
Yeah.
there's just too many good receivers, there's too many good offenses. The game is geared for the offense. So that just doesn't happen anymore, to your point. But the other thing I would say, man, and like in the way you were just raving about this offense, and I'm sure some people watch this and think, man, I don't know, is it really that good? Go back and watch the portion of Alex Atkins' interview on Sunday when he talks about Jordan Travis's approach to not feeling like he has to force the ball down the field or force the ball to Johnny Wilson or force the ball to Jaheim Bell. The knowledge that he has that he doesn't matter who he throws it to, there's somebody that could take it to a distance. Man, that's special, man, and that's what they have on this offense. I mean, that's legitimate. And Norvell, we've seen since Mike Norvell's been here and Alex Atkins now the last couple of years, they're going to scheme guys open. Well, now you're scheming guys open that aren't just like college football players, but a lot of them are elite college football players. It's I'm with you, man. I think they could put up some crazy numbers this season.
With all due respect to Pokey Wilson, who was big game Pokey Wilson last year, if that's Destin Hill in that situation, you know, if that's Jaheim Bell that's schemed open. There was a play I remember in the second half of the Florida game where this is now score for score. They're going back and forth, and Cam McDonald's wide open. They just cross over midfield. They're going to where the band used to be and the club section, and Cam's wide open. I mean, if that's Jaheim Bell in that situation, Ira, if that's Morlock this year or next, man, and it's going to be, because you have to account for Johnny and Keon on either side, or Trey Benson, or there's just a lot of poison picking going on for opposing defenses. If this defense can, rack up a couple of picks a game against Clemson and LSU, it's just they have it in them to go run away, and they did not last year. They did not have that capability. That's where I think the potential of what this group is has us all excited. So we appreciate that question. The next question, as we're rounding out the Smash tonight on a Monday, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. When will Warchant talk to the LSU beat writers? I believe Wake Up Warchant has a scheduled interview. I saw that in the hopper this week. So, Mike, there's an answer there. Also, I could tell you that Matt Moscona, we've been efforting to get him for a couple of weeks on the Jeff Cameron Show. He's Jeff's counterpart, a radio host out there in the Baton Rouge area. So you'll be seeing that soon. And Mike, you're going to like what you hear out of LSU camp. It sounds like they got some issues to iron out. So we appreciate that question. Garnet, Golden Glory, if we beat LSU, what do you think the odds are that
That's not happening?
No. So podcast listeners, what are the odds that Corey will wear a hairpiece? No. Maybe a beanie. You might get a beanie out of him. I don't know about a hairpiece, but we appreciate that. Garnet, Golden Glory. Tony Cleveland, Tom and Ira, do you guys think that the defense will go from good to great this season because the hype is around the offense? We've been kind of circling around this, Ira, but good to great, is that a step too far, a bridge too far?
Yeah, I don't know that I'd say it's going to be great. I mean, I don't know. There's just not a lot of great defenses in college football other than Georgia. And even sometimes those great defenses get exposed in college football today. So, yeah, I don't know. Because, again, I just think the lexicon of for a Florida State fan, when you think of great defense, you think about like the year Derek Brooks outscored FSU's opponents like halfway through the season.
Yep.
Like he outscored them by himself. I mean, that stuff, I mean, you're just not doing that anymore. You're not getting the shutouts. You're not getting those kinds of performances. But I think I have no doubt they're going to be better than they were last year. I think if the defensive front stays healthy, I think they could be the way you described them earlier, Tom, is a defense that creates takeaways, creates big negatives, puts the other team's offense into situations where they've got to do things they're not comfortable with, which might lead to turnovers. All of those things I see this defense having the ability to do. I don't know that on paper it's going to look any better than it did last year. I mean, and people scoff at when you say that last year was a top 20 defense statistically because they didn't play great offense in the second half of the season. Well, I mean, you play who you play. And I thought they were a good defense last year. I think they could be a very good defense this year. I don't know that I would say they're going to be great just because I don't know if that's even a thing.
Yeah, agreed. It's tough in this day and age of college football to be great. If Darryl Jackson's waiver is approved and he plays all 12 games, they got a chance to be great by today's definitions, though, because how fresh everybody's going to be up the middle, the ability to get teams in a third and obvious. That's the whole goal here for me. Productive would be the term I would give them. They have a chance to be very productive this year. So last couple of questions. Go ahead.
Just follow up on that. Listen, if Braden Fisk and if you've got Braden Fisk, Josh Farmer, Fabian Lovett, Dennis Briggs, that foursome there, Jared Verse, Patrick Payton, Gilbert Edmonds, come on. Now you've got a front four. I feel like is a two deep of your front four that's going to be about as good as everybody, but maybe a few teams in the country. And then you add into that fifth-year senior linebackers, very experienced secondary with a lot of talent back there. Yeah, man, they should be a good defense.
Last couple of questions. As Michael Langston lurks there, a top 5 recruiting class for Florida State this summer. They've been in and out of there, but they're recruiting at a crazy level. So make sure to head over to the message boards, the premium recruiting board. Michael's going to have a report on an upcoming decision, too, on Warchant TV, so be on the lookout for that. Sean asks, I've heard great things about DJ Lundy this camp. Have you all seen that as well? Thanks, gentlemen. Sean, we've mentioned how DJ had a really good couple of weeks. Ira, do you want to go into specifics once more about that? There was a play you saw, but overall his play, how would you assess it?
Yeah, no, he's been really good. He has been very good. I don't know, man. He to me, there's not two starters than DJ Lundy. Like last year, I felt like Tatum Bethune and Kalen DeLoach were your starters. DJ Lundy was the next, in that next group. And I thought there was a little bit of a drop off before you got to him. I think he's right there with those guys. And he may, by the time the season plays out, we'll see, he may end up being as good or the best of that group. I really think, you think about what his body has changed. I mean, we saw him 3 years ago when he first came in. He was overweight. Then he dropped all that weight. Well, now he's bulked back up again. Remember during the summer when we saw the weights and we said, oh, DJ Lundy put on 10 more pounds. That's probably not good because he had dropped all that weight.
Yep.
Well, no, man, he looks great. He's in great shape, and he's big and strong. He's probably, I don't know, Tatum Bethune also. Like DJ Lundy, I think is a really good fit for, a middle linebacker in college football today. Like he can run, but he's also got some size to him. Yeah, man, I've been really impressed by him. How about you?
He looks quicker. He looks quicker to the football, which is that's a great compliment because he didn't have that. And
I think he's diagnosing things a lot faster. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I agree. Last year it was, these are your starters, and then here's the rest. They're starting to bridge that gap. I don't know if it's all the way there. LSU is such a tough first test, too. I hope everybody doesn't, become prejudiced about this defense and what it is or what it isn't after a game against an offense like LSU. But, yeah, I mean, there's a picture of TJ. Trust me, even at that size, and those shoulder pads look like they're straight out of 1985.
It does.
He is a lot quicker to the football. He's around it more, which is the whole name of the game when you're a linebacker. So,
well, I think, if you go back, didn't he, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. Like he didn't play a lot of linebacker. I think he was mostly a fullback, running back. I could be wrong on that. I don't think he played a ton of linebacker coming up. So I think you're seeing him really learn the position and learn his keys and really trigger. And I think, I think I've been really impressed by him.
Also, number 10 in the offensive backfield, if they let him play fullback a little bit more this year, that's a good look right there. Right. A good number for both sides of the ball. Buffalo Tom says FSU by 28 plus, 4-0 against the SEC this year. Well,
let's go, Tom.
Hoisting a national title trophy. All right. Guess we're going out to Pasadena for a bowl game, a semifinal game. Ira, would you make the trip? Would you sacrifice for people and go out to the Rose Bowl again if Florida State is here?
I feel like, I'd sacrifice again. It's so difficult, but I think I would do it for the people.
Yeah, I would do it as well in case, because Corey doesn't like planes, so I'll hop on that plane. It's okay.
He'll make an exception if they're in the playoff, I think.
Yeah, a couple quick ones at the end. Spartan old Ralph, who is making his way back to the mainland this week. I believe he'll be in Tallahassee this weekend. He says over under one ridiculous moment for LSU in which there's an untimed down for absolutely no reason. Ira, we got to go under this year, right? They're not going to make it up as they go again.
That can't happen in Orlando. I mean, we expect it in the Superdome.
Yeah,
but you'd like to think that's not going to happen.
And then lastly, Joe Smith, we'll go with you. What a great general name. Am I wrong to say that Fabo isn't a big deal anymore? We have more talent now. I feel like we don't lose much without him. I say, Joe, respectfully, you might be wrong on that one. Fabo is still a big deal, man, especially if Darryl Jackson's waiver the situation doesn't improve. You got to be fresh for 12 games. And that first month, you got to be fresh for 2 giant games. And Fabo's a big part of that rotation. What would you say, Ira?
I think people forget what he is when he's healthy, because last year, I mean, you got to give the guy credit. He and Jared Verse too. Like, both those guys played hurt a lot, but when Fabio, before he got hurt, man, he was a dominant football player, and he was dominant in that LSU game. And I think you'll see him, if he's healthy throughout the course of the season, I think he's got a chance to have a great year. And part of the reason he stayed in college, I think, is because he knows what he could be. He just hasn't had a chance to show it yet. So yeah, man, I have a feeling we might be reminded, if he's fully healthy this season, of what he can be.
Well, and what are you going to do? Double him? You know, if Braden Fisk's out there and Jared Verse, I mean, somebody's going to be in singles and somebody's going to feast. That's where this defense can get scary. So before we sign off, everybody, here's a little reminder I'll wipe up on the screen. You like hats? You want to get your FSU hat for the season? Well, Warchant Days for Warchant.com members commence again this Wednesday, August the 23rd, 15% off all hats at garnetandgold.com. We will issue a gift code for you to use on Wednesday so you can get that proper hat. You know, every year, Ira, I go get a new baseball hat for my Major League Baseball team. It's a tradition. Some hats have good seasons, some don't. If you're superstitious like me, Garnet and Gold on Wednesday, but you got to be a member of Warchant.com to get that discount. We've had 25% off the vault already, 15% off of all hats this month. There'll be another big saving coming up in September. And remember, Warchant.com members get 10% off of all Garnet and Gold purchases all season long. You talk about saving money. Warchant, that's what we do for you on Warchant.com. Ira, it's time for that. And one more thing for the end of the show. What do you want to promote that we're doing this week?
Actually, I just want to answer Caleb's question. Caleb asked about Blake Nicholson. How's he looking? And, of course, the Warchant community came strong. Wesley Todd told him that Blake's been looking good. He has been looking good. I mean, Blake Nicholson, I don't – again, I mean, he's got to get thicker. I mean, he is a lanky he's impressive, but, man, what you were talking about earlier, the way like DJ Lundy's learning how to really, identify things and trigger, like Blake's already got that. Like he's got, you tell him he's got very good instincts, exceptional athlete, can really run. I'm intrigued to see what he's going to look like as a grown man, like in a couple of years with Josh Storms. But man, Adam Fuller said the other day, I think that, he's a guy that they could see him getting on the field as a freshman. He's going to be really good. He had crazy stats coming out of high school, was very highly recruited. Sometimes with guys out of California, you don't know how it's going to translate, but it definitely looks like it's going to translate.
Seems like the instincts are taking over after a couple of weeks of camp. He's playing quicker. I think you're right, though, Ira. The first time I saw him, I said, man, all right, need to work with some Coach Storms. That's okay. You're a freshman, but could use some work in the training room. But he's just been a lot quicker. He had an interception in the last week of camp. It may have been thrown right to him, but he came down with it. And they're working on defensively, too, on catching the football a lot more. It seems to be a point of emphasis is generating those turnovers. We're going to be generating content on warchant.com. There you go, segue, including a reality-style confessional, Warchant confessional, right? What's going on?
Yeah, so we've got coming tomorrow, if you go to the site warchant.com, we've got – basically, we did our Warchant Top 40 during the summer, and a lot of times we wait till after the season to kind of maybe do a retrospective about guys we got right, guys we got wrong, who should have been higher or lower. After a month of preseason camp, well, I guess 3 weeks of preseason camp, we've seen enough. It's like we're calling a race in politics. We've seen enough in certain guys that individually we had guys too low or too high. Mm-hmm. We're going to kind of reconcile that, so everybody's going to get a chance. All 6 of us who took part in the Warchant Top 40, we're going to do our confessions and confessions and corrections, where we explain the guys that we got wrong, and then maybe pat ourselves on the back for the ones we feel proud about that we got right. So that'll be coming up on the site tomorrow. Corey also, I think, has a column coming about Destin Hill, who just kind of reflecting on what's gone on here with Destin Hill in his 3 weeks of preseason camp. That's coming. And then they'll be back at practice on Wednesday. And I think Michael, like you said, Michael's got some good content coming with the Zaquan Patterson commitment coming up and some other things in recruiting.
There's the live schedule for the week. We have live shows every weekday, 1 o'clock here. Tomorrow it will be Seminole Headlines featuring Ira and Jeff and Corey. That'll be 1 to 3 p.m. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, JCS. And on Thursday night at 6 p.m., little wake up Warchant action. Also for the members on warchant.com this week, this is not a live show per se, but it'll be Ask Warchant Anything, Ask Jeff Cameron. So he won't be on the boards answering. That's too much work to punch the keys for an hour. So
that's why I was like, why did I get signed up for having to type? Jeff just gets to just talk to the camera. That's fine. That's fine.
That's his. You know what? That's his medium, though. You and I cut our teeth on. Even though I've done radio, that's how I cut my teeth, was punching keys or a pen and paper. But he's going to take those questions, respond to them via video. So warchant.com members tomorrow, be on the lookout for that. Tons of content. We are in the home stretch before kickoff against LSU. Home stretch before we get in our cars and see everybody down in Orlando. So for all the best coverage, hit the like button underneath this video. Subscribe to Warchant TV. It's absolutely free. And head over to the website. And also, if you're looking to support people who support Florida State and the content you love, call up Russ Vorhis, won't you? State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. 2 phone numbers there at the bottom, russvorhis.com. For Ira, I am Tom. This has been the Monday Smash. We will talk to you on Warchant TV tomorrow at 1 p.m. Thanks again to everybody who contributed and to Director Ben behind the scenes.